In 1966, a father in Springfield, Ohio, bought a set of Craftsman wrenches from the Sears on the town square, forged in America, and used them to keep 2 cars, a furnace, and a whole house running for the next 40 years. When he died, his son opened the toolbox and found them still bright. The chrome was unworn, the stamped letters still crisp. Those were not just tools. They were the inheritance, and every one of them was made in a way the company stopped making them decades ago. The son can still buy something with the same name on it today. What he cannot buy at any price is the tool his father actually handed him. The forged wrench that outlived the man who owned it is number 6 on this list. And the one thing Sears gave that dad in 1966 that mattered more than any single tool, the thing that vanished most completely of all, is number 1. He was not a rare man. In 1966, Craftsman was the tool of the American working man, sold at the Sears in every town, forged by American hands, and passed from father to son as a matter of course. A boy grew up handing his dad wrenches out of a red Craftsman box. One day, the box became his. We did not lose these tools because they wore out. That is the strange thing about this list. The best of them never wore out at all, and that was the whole point. What we lost was the company's will to keep making them that way. Starting around 2010, the American forges went quiet, and the work moved overseas to cut costs. By 2013, the tools a dad had trusted for 50 years were being replaced on the shelf with something that wore the name, but not the make. The tool did not fail us. The people who made it decided we were not worth the cost of the good version. Number 14 is a ratchet so well made that men still hunt for the old ones at estate sales, because the new one with the same name is not the same tool. Number 6 is the forged wrench from the top of this story, the one that outlived its owner. And number 1 is not a tool at all. It is the promise Sears stood behind for 100 years, the thing that made a Craftsman tool worth passing down, and the thing that quietly died when the company changed hands. These 20 tools were the mark of a company that once made things to last a lifetime, and a family that trusted them to, not a purchase, an inheritance. Every one of these, that Springfield dad passed to his son with his own 2 hands. Before we count them down, one honest word, because this channel respects the people who watch it. The Craftsman name still exists, and some tools under it are decent, but the specific tools on this list, made the specific way that made them legends, are gone, and knowing the difference is the whole point. If that kind of honest history is worth your time, subscribe and stay to the end, because the last one is the one that matters most. Let us count down the 20 lost Sears Craftsman tools every American dad passed down that they stopped making. Number 20. The click-type torque wrench. A dad who did his own engine work owned a Craftsman torque wrench, a precision tool that clicked at exactly the right tightness, so a bolt was never too loose or too tight. You dialed the setting, pulled steady, and felt and heard the click that told you the head bolt or the lug nut was torqued to specification, dead on. It was a real instrument, built and calibrated to a standard, sold at a price a home mechanic could actually reach. For the dad torquing a cylinder head in his own garage, this tool did work that otherwise meant a trip to a shop. The Springfield dad kept his in its own case and taught his son to feel for that click. The old ones held their calibration for decades, where the trust in the name has thinned since. Not a guess with a plain wrench, a click that tells you it is right. Number 19, the nut driver set. A dad kept a Craftsman set of nut drivers, screwdriver-handled tools with a socket on the end that spun a hex nut or a hose clamp fast and by feel. You slid the driver onto the nut, spun it with a flick of the wrist, and it ran the fastener down quicker than any wrench in a tight spot. The set came in a rack, color-coded or stamped by size, each one built to grip the nut without rounding it. For the dad working on a carburetor or a furnace panel full of hex nuts, the nut drivers were faster than anything else in the box. Sears built them cheap and lasting, which is exactly the combination they stopped offering. Not a nut you fight with a wrench. A driver you spin by hand. Number 18, the cast iron bench vise. Bolted to the corner of the workbench was a Craftsman vise, a heavy casting with smooth jaws and a screw that never bound, holding whatever a man needed to work on. You cranked the handle and the jaws closed with real force. The piece sat dead still while you filed, sawed, or hammered it. That vise was heavy iron, meant to be bolted down once and used for a lifetime, and it usually outlived the bench it sat on. For the dad who fixed everything at that bench, the vise was the third hand that made the work possible, holding the piece while his own two hands did the work. The old cast vices are prized now because the new ones are lighter and lesser. Not a vise you replace. A vise you mount once.
Before we go on, I made something special for you. A guide for men like us who still believe a man should be able to fix his own home. It's the forgotten handyman secrets, the old-fashioned repair tricks our grandfathers used to fix anything around the house and keep it running for life. But these skills are disappearing fast, and once they're gone for good. Don't pay a repairman ever again. Scan the QR code on screen or click the link below. Go ahead, I'll wait right here.
Number 17, the drop-forged ball-peen hammer. A dad's Craftsman ball-peen hammer had a drop-forged head and a straight hickory handle, balanced so it swung true and struck clean. You choked up for a tap or dropped to the end for a full blow. The forged head took 40 years of striking without a chip or a crack. The steel was heat-treated hard where it counted and left tough where it mattered, the mark of a maker who understood the tool. For the dad setting a rivet or driving a punch, the hammer was an extension of his own arm. Not a hammer you throw out, a hammer you rehandle and keep. Number 16, the socket set in the metal case. The Craftsman socket set came laid out in a steel case, every socket in its slot, and it opened up every bolt on every machine a family owned. You broke the bolt loose with the breaker bar and spun it out with the ratchet, and the truck or the mower came apart in your hands. The sockets were forged and broached clean, so they gripped the flats of a bolt instead of rounding them, and they lasted for generations. For the dad who could not afford a mechanic, that one case of sockets was the difference between a running car and a stalled one. And the Springfield dad broke his down over 100 stalled Saturdays. Not a set you outgrow, a set you build on. Number 15, the hand-forged slip-joint pliers. A dad's Craftsman slip-joint and lineman's pliers were forged tools with a joint that stayed tight and jaws that bit and held for a lifetime. You gripped, twisted, cut, and pulled, and the pliers did not loosen at the pivot or dull at the teeth. Cheap ones give out in a year. These did not. Forged from good steel and finished by hand, they were the kind of tool a man used daily and never thought about replacing. For the dad splicing a wire or pulling a nail, the pliers were the tool always in his hand. Not pliers that wear loose, pliers that stay tight. Number 14, the fine-tooth ratchet. This is the ratchet men still hunt for at estate sales, a Craftsman ratchet with a fine-tooth mechanism and a body that felt like it was carved from a single block of steel. You seated the socket, and the ratchet turned a bolt in a tight space with a short swing. It made a sound like a fine watch, a fast, even click no cheap tool ever matched. The old ones were built with a tolerance and a smoothness that the replacement, wearing the same name, simply does not have. For the dad working in the cramped space over an engine, that ratchet was the tool that turned an impossible bolt. Men seek out the vintage ones now precisely because they know the new one is not the same. Not a ratchet you replace, a ratchet you search for. Stop the count for a moment, because to understand why these tools vanished, you have to understand what Craftsman was and what happened to it. For most of a century, Sears did not make Craftsman tools itself. It contracted the work out to American forges, real companies with real furnaces. Moore Drop Forging, Western Forge, Easco, Danaher. Their steel went out under the Craftsman name and the Sears guarantee. That arrangement made a tool that was affordable, forged in America, and backed by the best warranty in the trade, all at once. Then Sears began to fail. In the 2000s, to cut costs, the company started moving the work overseas. Around 2010, the new imported tools appeared. By 2012 and 2013, whole American-made lines had been discontinued and replaced with versions made in China and Taiwan. In 2017, Sears sold the Craftsman name to Stanley Black & Decker for around $900 million. In 2018, Sears itself went bankrupt. A factory was promised in Texas to bring the making home. It opened in 2019 and closed by 2023, the work going back overseas. This is the honest heart of it. The name did not die. The way of making the tool did. What your father passed down was not just steel, it was a whole vanished way of making things to last. Number 13, the forged pipe wrench. A dad's Craftsman pipe wrench was a heavy forged tool with hardened teeth that bit into iron pipe and turned it without slipping. You set the jaws and leaned on the handle, and the teeth grabbed and held where a lesser wrench would skate and strip the pipe. It was built for the real force of plumbing work, forged and hardened to take a beating for decades. For the dad with a well, a water heater, and every pipe in the house to keep, this wrench kept the water running. Not a wrench that slips, a wrench that bites and holds. Number 12, the adjustable wrench that stayed tight. The Craftsman adjustable wrench had a jaw that slid smooth and then stayed put under load, instead of drifting open and rounding the nut like a cheap one. You dialed it to the bolt, and it held that setting through the whole pull, tight and true, instead of drifting open under load. The worm gear was cut clean, and the jaws were hardened, so the wrench kept its grip for a lifetime of use. For the dad who needed one wrench for 100 sizes, the adjustable that did not slip was worth its weight in gold. Not a wrench that drifts open, a wrench that holds its set. Number 11, the forged cold chisel and punch set. A dad kept a set of Craftsman cold chisels and punches, forged bars of hard steel for cutting, driving, and knocking loose what nothing else could. You set the chisel and struck it with the ball peen, and it cut through a rusted bolt or a stubborn rivet that had no other answer. The steel was hardened to hold an edge and tempered so the struck end would not shatter. The difference between a good tool and a dangerous one. A mushroomed, cheaply made chisel throws chips. A Craftsman one did not. For the dad facing a seized, rusted piece of iron, the chisel was the tool of last resort, that always worked. Not a chisel that mushrooms and cracks. A chisel forged to be struck. Number 10. The tape measure that locked and lasted. The Craftsman tape measure had a blade that stood out stiff and a lock that held it exactly where you set it, year after year. You pulled the blade, locked it, and marked your line, and the tape snapped back clean and true every time. It was built with a spring and a case that took being dropped on a concrete floor 1,000 times without dying. For the dad measuring lumber for a project, a tape that read "True and lasted" was a small thing he relied on constantly, in his hands 12 times a day. Today, many tape measures under the name carry only a limited warranty, not the old promise. Not a tape you rebuy every year. A tape that reads "True for decades." Here is the part of the story we have skipped. That Springfield dad did not buy his tools all at once. He built the set over years, the way a man did then, one tool at a time as he could afford it. The first was a single wrench, bought the week he brought his first car home in 1958. He added to the roll paycheck by paycheck, a socket set one Christmas, a ratchet the next, until the red box was full. His own father had done the same before him, and some of the oldest tools in that box had come down from the grandfather, bought at the same Sears decades earlier. When the son inherited it, he was not holding one man's tools. He was holding 3 generations of them, all under the same name, all still working. They had all been made to last, and all been backed by the same promise. And that promise, the thing that made a Craftsman tool worth handing down at all, is number 1. Number 9. The forged flat and Phillips screwdrivers. A dad's Craftsman screwdrivers had forged shanks and hardened tips that gripped a screw instead of stripping it or rounding off. You set the tip in the slot and put your weight behind it, and it turned the screw without camming out or twisting the blade. The steel was tempered to take real torque, and the handle was set so it never turned loose on the shank. For the dad doing every small repair in the house, the screwdriver that did not strip was the tool he reached for 12 times a day, and it never chewed the head of a screw the way a soft tip does. Not a tip that rounds off, a tip that grips and turns. Number 8. The forged aviation snips. The Craftsman aviation snips cut sheet metal in a clean line with a compound hinge that multiplied a man's grip into real cutting force. You squeezed, and the hardened jaws sheared through tin and sheet steel like it was paper, following a curve or a straight line true. They were forged and ground to hold an edge through years of cutting that would dull a lesser tool in a month. For the dad working on ductwork or flashing, the snips that cut clean saved hours of ragged, cut-up work, following his pencil line true through the sheet. Not snips that chew the metal, snips that shear it clean. Number 7, the heavy-duty bench grinder. A Craftsman bench grinder sat bolted beside the vise, a heavy motor with a stone on each end that brought a dull edge back to life. You leaned the blade or the bit into the wheel, and the sparks poured off in a bright fan. A dead edge came back sharp in a minute. It was built with a motor heavy enough to run for 40 years without complaint, the kind of machine a man bolted down and never replaced. For the dad who sharpened his own everything, the grinder kept every other tool on the bench alive, and it ran evening after evening at chore time without a complaint. Not a machine you replace, a machine that outlives you. Number 6, the forged wrench that outlived its owner. This is the tool from the top of our story, and it stands for all of them. The Springfield dad's forged Craftsman wrench outlasted 40 years of hard use and then outlived the man himself, coming to his son still bright and unworn. When the son went looking to buy one exactly like it, he found he could not, because the forged American wrench of his father's day had been discontinued and replaced with an import that wore the name but not the make. That is the quiet grief at the center of this whole list. The tool was made so well it outlived its owner, and the company that made it stopped making it that way while it still sat in the box. For the son holding his father's wrench, it was a tool and a memory and a thing he could never replace, all in the same worn, bright piece of steel. Not a tool you can buy again, a tool that outlived the way it was made. Number 5, the socket organizer and rolling chest. A dad kept his Craftsman tools in a Craftsman chest, a heavy steel cabinet with drawers that rolled smooth on real bearings and locked tight. You slid a drawer, and it glided out full of tools and back without catching. It held a lifetime's collection in clean order. The chest was made of real gauge steel, welded and painted to survive a garage for 50 years, and it usually did. For the dad, whose whole working life lived in that red chest, it was the vault that held the inheritance, and it was the first thing the son loaded onto the truck when the house was cleared. Not a box that rusts through, a chest that holds a lifetime. Number 4, the forged locking pliers. The Craftsman locking pliers clamped down and held with a grip that no hand could match, freeing a man's hands for the rest of the job. You set the jaws and squeezed until they locked, and they held a pipe or a broken stud with brute mechanical force until you released them. The forged jaws and the hardened screw kept their grip for decades, where a cheap pair wore loose in a season. For the dad wrestling a rounded bolt that nothing else would turn, the locking pliers were the tool that saved the job. Not a grip that slips, a grip that locks and holds. Number 3, the whole matched set built over a lifetime. The real inheritance was not any single tool. It was the whole matched set, assembled over decades under one name, every piece forged to the same standard and backed by the same promise. A man today buys a plastic-handled kit at a big box store all at once, and half of it is worn out or lost in a year. The dad built his set one honest tool at a time, and every piece fit the same drawers and carried the same guarantee, so the collection became worth more than the sum of its tools. For the son who inherited it, the matched set was a working record of his father's whole life. Not a kit you buy in a blister pack, a set you build across a lifetime. Number 2, the tool made to be repaired, not replaced. The thing that truly set these tools apart was that they were made to be kept, not thrown away. A forged wrench, a cast vise, a steel ratchet, all of them could be cleaned, rehandled, or rebuilt because they were made of real material a man could work with. When a hammer handle broke, you fit a new hickory handle to the good forged head, and the hammer was whole again. Nothing was sealed, glued, or made throwaway on purpose, the way so much is now. For the dad who mended everything, a tool he could repair was a tool he owned for life, not one he rented from the store until it broke. Not a tool you toss, a tool you keep whole. Number 1, the lifetime warranty, no questions asked. And it is the thing this whole list has been circling since the first minute. Before any single tool, the thing Sears gave that dad in 1966 was a promise. If a Craftsman hand tool ever broke, ever, for any reason, you carried it back to any Sears counter. They handed you a new one, free, no receipt, and no questions. That warranty is why a man trusted the tool with his life's work. It is why he could hand it down knowing it would be honored for his son, too. It was not really a warranty on the steel. It was a promise from a company to stand behind what it made, for as long as the tool existed, which was forever. Here is the part worth sitting with. The tools were extraordinary, but the promise behind them was the real inheritance, because it said the company believed in its own work enough to guarantee it for life. When Sears fell and the brand was sold, that promise did not vanish entirely. The legacy tools are still honored, but the counter you trusted is gone. The stores are nearly all closed, and the new tools under the name carry lesser guarantees. What that dad really passed down was not a box of steel. It was the word of a company that stood behind its work for 100 years. We did not lose the tools. The good ones are still in the box, still working. What we lost was the promise behind them, and a company willing to make it. Not the most powerful tool on this list, the plainest, and the one that can never be handed down again. None of it was about the steel alone. That is the honest heart of this whole list. Craftsman made superb tools, and the best of them are still out there, in red boxes in garages across America, still bright, still turning bolts. But what made them worth passing down was never just the forging. It was a company that made them to last a lifetime in American forges and stood behind every one with a promise it kept for 100 years. That is the thing that stopped being made. The dad in our story built a set across a lifetime, handed it to his son, and trusted that the name on the tools meant what it always had. The son can still find the name on a shelf at the big box store. What he cannot find is the tool his father knew, made the way it was made, backed the way it was backed, by a company that meant it. We did not lose the tools. We lost the making of them, and the promise behind them, and a father who trusted both enough to pass them on. The tools were only ever the half of it. The other half was a company that meant it, and a man who believed them.